What is going on, YouTube? So coming back today with my next NBA draft scouting report. And today I'm doing Thon Maker, the only player that I'm doing in this that did not play any bit of college ball or basketball overseas in Europe, or I guess China or Asia, any other part of Asia. But go ahead and get into some of his background information. So he's a 7'1", 225-pound power forward. He's 19 years old, out of the Sudan, but I believe he went to high school in Sydney, Australia. I'd have to check that out. I'm pretty sure that's right, though. But he's got a 7'2" wingspan also. So getting into some of his strengths, first one is his size and length. He's got a 9'4" standing reach. I talked about this with Dragan Bender yesterday. He's got the length and the effort to be able to be a very capable defender. I don't know if he's going to be able to keep that consistency and get that feel for the game that you need to be a good defender down low. He's going to have to fill out the frame a little bit more. That's one thing that's for sure, though. But at the 4 position, that's obviously a hard combination of size and he's a pretty good athlete, so it's hard to find that combination of size and athleticism in a player. So get to his next strength, which he's a good rim protector. He's good, not great. I think like I said, his athleticism, his motor, and his overall size have the makings to be a very good rim protector, but his feel for the game and defensive awareness show that he cannot be a good rim protector if he develops well, and there's no signs pointing to whether he's going to develop well or not. I mean, this is a hard guy to figure out. He was able to get into the draft through kind of a loophole, which I'm honestly not exactly aware of what it was, but I know that he is not a very common situation. But anyway, if he can develop that feel on defense, maybe get a little bit more lateral movement and play a little bit better body D and just understand where he is on the court a little bit better, then I think he will develop actually into a pretty good rim protector in the NBA. So we get into his third strength, which I mentioned a little bit earlier. He's got a great motor. The kid always wants to compete. It looks like he always wants to leave it all on the floor, which is one of my favorite qualities in a player. It's something that is an extreme positive and honestly is not that easy to find. When you find it, especially if he's got the willingness and the work ethic to be able to get better, with his lack of experience and exposure, that's something that will definitely help him, especially being a first-round pick. If he does end up getting picked there, it's kind of up in the air where he's going to get picked at, though. So getting to his fourth strength, which is he's got a good jump shot. So he's a little bit limited offensively, but his jump shot's honestly pretty good. He's about a 30-33% three-point shooter, so he's capable of doing it, but not great. But his mid-range, he's about a 45 to 48% shooter from mid-range, which is honestly pretty good numbers, especially for a guy his size. You'd expect more of a post-up or, especially with his style of play, I guess you'd expect more of a post-up and, slashing type of player. So get into some of his weaknesses, and first one is his lack of exposure and experience. I just mentioned this. He didn't play a single game of college ball. He managed to skip out on that. He got some exposure in Nike Hoop Summit World Game for 18U, and honestly, that's really it. There's not that much film on him. He's been a big name, up and coming ever since he was 16 years old. I know that there's been mixtapes and hype, or at least a little bit of hype around him for about 3 years now. Because I'd heard of him well before he had declared for the draft, and there's some other players along the lines of, I guess, Ivica Zubac, Zhao Qi, that I just never heard of before the draft talk for 2016 started coming around late 2015. But anyway, like I said, he doesn't have a great feel for the game yet. If you just watch some of his film, you can just tell the awareness on the court, the impatience, and really just the inability to make simple plays. Just shows you that he just needs more he needs more exposure to the game. He needs to be taught well. And again, sometimes that turns into a player that just has no idea what they're doing in the NBA and just can't develop into anything. Or sometimes he becomes a project that actually pans out. Again, it's just a risk you take with a player like this that has this amount of limited exposure. So get into his second weakness, which he kind of builds off the first one. He doesn't have a well-rounded offensive game. Like I said, he's a good jump shooter, but he's not a good facilitator. He turns the ball over a lot. He gets tunnel vision a lot, and sometimes he forces jump shots. Now he's not. Again, he doesn't have that big of hands either, from what I've heard. So I don't know. That has the makings of not a good situation in the post. He's got a limited set of post moves, if anything at all. Most of the time in the post, he just tries to bowl through people and hopefully get to the rim and either dunk or just throw in a layup. He doesn't really have any drop step spin moves. First step isn't that quick either. So, like I said, it just needs I think it needs a little bit of touching up before he ends up being, I guess maybe a role player that takes up a lot of minutes or a good rotation player. So, get into his last weakness, which is his strength and just his overall frame. Like I said, he's got a great motor and he likes to play physical, and he's a high energy player, but his strength and his overall, I guess, thin frame just don't match that style of play. He's going to have to put on probably 15 pounds to be able to have any effectiveness in the style that he would be most effective at in the NBA, and really the style of play, just to maximize his I guess effectiveness for his style of play and what his ceiling is set at. All right, so that concludes my strengths and weaknesses for Thon Maker. So talk about what, again, everyone wants to hear about a guy like this. So the last time I did a mock draft, he was not eligible for the draft yet. I didn't know if he was going to the draft. I honestly thought he was going to end up going to college. This is a guy that if he was not going to be eligible for the draft, he probably would have been a one and done at one of the power schools in college basketball. I believe KU was the favorite to land him. Ever since he is draft eligible, I think, in my personal opinion, he should probably go late first. Because again, it's just I don't think that any team in the lottery that actually needs a player to build around is going to be able to take a guy like this. This guy's a project. If I like to say, imagine if Joel Embiid hadn't played a year in college. It's kind of like what I think of Thon Maker. I think San Antonio would be an okay fit for him, so obviously they're drafting stash. I think that he needs a good player, good set of players, a good coach to work under, just kind of learn by exposure. I think that's the situation he needs to be in. Last NBA draft.net mock draft has him taken at 28 by the Phoenix Suns. I don't think that'd be a great situation for him, but as long as he gets probably 2 or 3 years to just develop and maybe only play 8 to 12 minutes per game at most, and in 2-3 years when he starts getting a better feel for the game, steadily bump up his minutes. I'd say his rookie year, expect something like 4 points, maybe 2 or 3 rebounds. He hits the glass hard. He can rebound very well. Like I said, the motor's there. Obviously, the size is there. The only thing is his hands. He's not the most coordinated player from what I've seen, just looking through some of his highlights. But I don't think there's been speculation of him being taken in the lottery. I just don't see it. For me, I'd say late first to early second round pick is probably where he should end up going. Just to some team that, has the ability to take in a project and develop them. And some team that's not afraid to do that, I'd say, is the best situation for him. So that pretty much does it for this video. Not that much to say about Thon Maker. Most of what he is speculation. Again, kind of like what I was saying with Dragan Bender yesterday. Sometimes there's just situations like that you just don't know. You just don't know how a player's going to turn out. I mean, obviously you don't really know how many players can turn out until they hit the NBA, but I'd say Dragon Bender and Thon Maker might be two of the biggest mysteries in the draft, which actually makes them pretty fun to talk about. So, like I said, that pretty much does it for this video. If you've not seen the last two scouting reports, those were Torn Prince and I believe, let's see here, Torn Prince and Dragon Bender. Then both those videos will be in the outro, or links to the videos, and then the link to the entire playlist will be in the description below. So tomorrow I will be doing Chris Dunn, probably the #1 point guard prospect in this draft, and finally getting back into some players that, you know, have a lot of exposure, and I don't know, get into some of the players that had a little bit more college exposure and have been talked about a little bit more. So that's pretty much it. It's my previous NBA draft scouting reports. Go check all those out. I'll put the link to all those in the description below. So, like I said, doing Dragon Bender today. So go through some of his background information, stats, and such. So he's a 7 foot, 220 pound power forward out of Bosnia